here today, and that's about it. And then we're going to go from there, okay? So we're going to start here on this side. That works. Here we go. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kristen Waldman, and I'm an environmental
Can we get the music off, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Everyone stop talking, please. Shut up!
Hi, my name is Kristen Waldman, and I'm an environmental activist.
My name is Candace Luther, and I'm a candidate for Manatee County Commissioner.
I'm Nina Schofield, and I'm the founder of Clear Water Tax Sectors Collective.
Hi, I'm Randall Townsend, originally Tampa, moved to Sarasota, and for now 31 years been fighting exposing deep state and what they actually have involved.
Hi, my name is Ruta Maria Giannari. I'm a candidate for Sarasota County Commissioner. The reason that I'm running for Sarasota County Commissioner, like many of you, we've seen our county change over the last decade, and we're seeing our agriculture disappear, our wetlands get paved over, our waters and our bays getting destroyed. And the reason I'm running for Sarasota County is to give all of us a voice to say enough is enough to big development, enough to big business, and it's time to take our county back.
My name is Andy Melee. I have a master's in environmental science. I am originally from the Hudson Valley. I used to be executive director of a group called Clearwater that was founded by Pete Seeger, the folk singer. And since they all took only 10 seconds, I figure I've got about a half hour. Okay, so I played a role in forcing General Electric, the world's most profitable corporation at the time, to clean up its toxic PCBs, a problem that had been going on for 35 years. So I thought I would bring that problem to bear on phosphate mining, the recipe that worked on General Electric, and put it to work on phosphate mining. And the other day, for the first time in history, we stopped Mosaic at the DeSoto County line. I also wrote a little book called Polluting for Pleasure back in '93. I used to be a boat builder. And this book pointed out the fact that outboard motors of the day, two-strokes, were putting out as much oil into America's waters as about 10, 15 Exxon Valdez's every year. And so my book was Exhibit A in a courtroom drama at the EPA, the federal court, and the Sierra Club won that. And now today you go boating, you're driving around in a four-stroke probably, and I did that. So thank you very much.
So, that's everybody, right? So, anybody here a Sarasota native? All right, cool. So am I. Has anybody lived here for more than 20 years? Raise your hand. Okay. Has anybody ever seen a red tide outbreak this bad?
Yes.
Really? This bad? Okay. I haven't. I'm from here, but this seems particularly bad. So what I was going to ask this panel, because we all know, perennial brevis, it's red tide, it is natural, absolutely. However, it seems that we've been feeding it a little bit. And so, what I want to ask these guys is what is it, thank you for the shushes, we appreciate that. What is it about this particular bloom that is making it so horrendous? There's a lot to it. We're just going to pass the mic around. We'll start with Andy. And if you guys have something to add to that, to answer, please do. 2 minutes each.
If I may, thank you. What's happened? Somebody pointed out in Englewood last night that Florida does not really have an algae problem. It has a nutrient pollution problem. And that is something we can fix. So you look at this problem and you think it is a fixable problem. Now the next question is how to get it fixed. What's happening is we have a government in Tallahassee, particularly our how are we doing now? Oh, that's much more better. All right. So Rick Scott has been instrumental in gutting the enforcement powers of the FDEP and all the rest of the state agencies, cutting their budget by $700 million. I noticed with some irony that he declared a state of emergency the other day and put $1.5 million back. But, you know, dude, it's not enough. He needs to go home. And really the way to fix this problem is to send them all home. Send them all home. Speaker, say it after me. Send them all home. Send them all home. Thank you very much.
I'm going to stay sitting. This red tide is unusual, I believe. I've been here 20 years, and I've never seen it this bad. But there's steps that all of us have to take. One, we do have to follow what Andy just said and vote out people who've been sitting on our local board level for county commissioners all the way up through to the state level and into the Congress. We have great candidates running. Please look them up. See who's pro-environment and please vote for them. That's the #1 thing you can do to make a change. After that, on a local level, there are things we can start doing, and I hope to implement when elected as county commissioner. And that is, we have to put a ban on fertilizer to make it year-round and not just a few months. We don't need green lawns. We don't need green golf courses year-round. We're polluting our own water.
When was the last time that law was enforced? Because everybody
Exactly.
If you guys want to hang on and hold your questions, I promise I will give everybody, we will have the opportunity for everybody to ask questions. We're shouting them out, not going to work. Thank you.
And this is part of the problem. We have laws and they're not enforced. We have this thing called the Comp Plan 2050. And what it is it's a plan that tells us how we're supposed to do sustainable development east of 75 to protect our wetlands, to protect our wildlife. Well, guess what? The variances no sooner than they put this into place, are variances coming from the developers to make sure that those variances get put in so that they can develop the way they want and not protect our environment. Again, it's critical. I'm sorry, I'm out of time limit, so I have to go. But it's critical. Please make sure that check who you can vote for. Make sure they're pro-environment. On a local level, plant things that you can eat and eat seasonally. These are things that we can do too as citizens. These are just small steps. And again, I'm sorry I'm taking over a little bit over 2 minutes, so I'll pass it on.
I'm going to be a bit brief because I know a lot of other people need to speak. But to continue on her point, another issue that we have is that we are killing all of the natural, native, aquatic plants that would normally filter out these excess nutrients. They're being sprayed, and that needs to stop now. We need to get regulations in place, county by county, to ensure that these plants can act as natural filters, and they won't be leading these algae blooms anymore.
Hello? Okay, I don't think it's the red tide because that's been going on for 3 years. I think it's the toxic blue-green algae pesticides that are really doing most of the killing because the red tide is making the red algae grow which is sucking up all the oxygen. The toxic blue-green algae outflow from the Lake Okeechobee is the stuff that's killing everything. So basically, let's just call it the blue-green algae outbreak. And then what you need to do is there's a dike around Lake Okeechobee, and they refuse to give us water when we have a drought. So now that they're overflowing and there's a lot of water, they just let it flow, and it only goes east and west. It's supposed to go south. And that U.S. Sugar was supposed to sell the 26,000 acres back to Florida years ago, but they changed their mind. Now, because of all the damage that's done, they should be sued to give us that 26 acres. Number two, the blue-green algae, the company that's doing most of the damage is Mosaic. So that company needs to be sued also. So you need to go to the source of the problem. And the water needs to be drained out south to the Everglades so it can be filtered. And the way to fix it really, there's 3 phases. Number 1, you let it go through these geopipes, the water that comes out of Lake Okeechobee. And then you put it through a copper dam, which kind of purifies it. And then you dredge the soil and clean up the soil debris after that.
Thank you. I just want to remind our panelists, these microphones are dynamic. You have to form an intimate relationship with them.
This doesn't work. This doesn't work.
This works. Okay?
Well, I want to add to this information that everybody else has been talking about, and I want to add a little bit more about Mosaic and their phosphate mining practices at the north end of Mosaic's phosphate mining practices that are at the north end of the Kissimmee River, the Peace River, and the Mayaca River. And Mosaic's phosphate mining practices are dumping phosphate and other chemicals into our waterways, which are flowing south, and that is actually what's contributing to the green algae that is growing in Lake Okeechobee. It's also dumping all kinds of toxins into the Peace River, which is where Sarasota County gets its drinking water supply. Manatee County just gave approval for a 5-year operating permit for Mosaic to continue their practices in Manatee County at the head of the Mayaca River for another 5 years. One of the reasons that I'm running for Manatee County Commissioners is to try to stop that from happening in Manatee County. But the green algae that flows out in the Gulf from Lake Okeechobee, everybody knows about that. The red tide is feeding off the green algae, which is continuing to make the red tide grow. And what is flowing down the Mayaca River and the Peace River is going out to Charlotte Harbor and contributing to the red tide out in the Gulf through Charlotte Harbor. And then as the winds blow it's traveling north. It's not traveling south, it's traveling north from Charlotte Harbor. I could talk all day. I'm going to pass to somebody else to give someone else a chance.
Thanks everyone for coming. Okay, so let's get some history. 1901, Mosaic and actually Monsanto was formed in St. Louis, Missouri. They started doing their testing with their glyphosates then and all the chemicals that started to then actually pollute the Mississippi River. I started fishing in the 70s with a guy named Doug Hannon, the bass professor, and we started fishing all the freshwater lakes. We started looking at why were the hydrangeas killed? Why was all the lakes then die up? And then we took that to hello? Okay, we took that to saltwater. And I started looking at where the Mississippi River flows out of New Orleans and comes right down to Inglewood and Venice. In a straight line, I call it the New Orleans River that flows out in the Gulf. Then you have the currents that bring that chemical that's actually flowing from the Mississippi then into shore, which then blooms with the tide issues because the heat changes. So red tide's been around, we say, for 100 years. Well, yeah, 1901, they started it right there in St. Louis, Missouri, and then it flows through the Mississippi. What we have today is the same company doing the same thing in the Kissimmee River chain, the Peace River, all the way to St. Lucie, all the way through the Okeechobee chain in the Everglades. They're not going to let the water flow back into the Everglades because that's the freshwater aquifer, if you will, now for Miami-Dade County. It has to go east and west. Then you just saw this week, if you look at some of the Facebook pages like mine, you saw we're 12 miles offshore out in the Atlantic, you have a big major fish kill. You look off to the east in the Gulf, you'll see another major fish kill. I looked over the shoulder of an FWC officer Thursday night 3 weeks ago and saw where on his computer it says there's over 500 manatees that they've already counted that are dead. That's 3 weeks ago, folks. That doesn't count dolphin. That same night he had to leave and go to where the north end of the Sarasota Siesta Bridge, where there was a baby dolphin being held up. We don't have any idea how bad this is. You're not going to cure it by any method that they've already currently tried. They're just pouring money in their own pockets in other different ways. The only way is get out the vote. All of them that are in office have to go. I've been researching this for 30 years. Trust me, you don't know how deep state really is and how they're profiting off of selling you sugar, which is actually killing you just as much. There are chemists that can't go into the Everglades and actually get any small palmetto or any other herbs and vegetables and anything like that anymore. The Everglades is already too contaminated. It's a sponge, it's full, it's got to flow somewhere. We've got to stop it at the very source.
John, just give us a little about who you are, so your introduction.
Sure, everybody can hear me out there okay? Everybody can hear okay? All right. A little louder? Is that what you're saying? Turn up the mic. A little louder, please, if you could. Because we want to make sure the message gets out clear to everybody, right? Is that the message here? So we're all in this together. We're in the right crowd, right? We're all together for the right reasons. We don't have many of the so-called enemies here today, so let's make sure we're loud and proud about what we're talking about. My name is John Heim, John G. Heim. I run a group called the South Florida Clean Water Movement. We're based out of tiny Fort Myers Beach, Florida. We are ground zero of the Lake Okeechobee discharges, okay? And the reason I'm here to speak and be a part of this program is because we're on a truth tour, is what we call it, the South Florida Clean Water Movement Truth Tour, where we're traveling throughout the state and educating, you know, everyone throughout the state and every city and every little stop along the way, including Clewiston and U.S. Sugar. And we're going to be setting up speeches, you know, through our, you know, basic group. And we're going to be at the message. The message point is what we're talking about. What good's the message if we're not given the correct message? So what I'm getting at is, okay, the quicker Charlotte County, Venice, Inglewood, Sarasota starts to understand that they too are being affected by the Lake Okeechobee discharges, that's when we unite as the power of the people, because they are connected. You'll have groups telling you they are not connected, but the high phosphorus levels and the high nutrients levels are what's fueling this massive bloom that's stretching over 200 plus miles of coastline, over 30 to 40 miles in width out into federal lands, I might add. Wednesday, I'm going on a professional charter fishing boat, and we're going with professional, you know, photography equipment, and I'm going underwater to film the death and destruction on federal land. So, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is John G. Heim of the South Florida Clean Water Movement. I highly suggest you follow us. We have over 80,000 followers online, not to mention statewide millions and global. You know, we're the real deal, and you know, the reality is we are the Southwest Florida Clean Water Movement, and that includes Inglewood, Venice, and Sarasota. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Costantino. I was born and raised here in Sarasota. I'm 54 years old. If you're a Democrat, you might have got one of a robocall from me. It was a little on the corny, but that was me. I had a little fun making that. I've had a two-year lawsuit against Sarasota County for giving away $10 million worth of public property on Siesta Key. And the way that the county has treated me has kind of led me to this run for District 4 County Commission. I would like to speak to a few things that each of the other panelists said. I completely agree with Ruta. My dad started the construction company that I run in 1956. I'm intimately familiar with that. We're builders, we're not developers, and I think one of the distinctions that we need to make, probably 60% of the building that goes on is by small builders like me, building in areas of existing infrastructure. That's not exactly what our problem is. What our problem is the massive development that keeps pushing east, spreading the suburban and urban sprawl, and not only transferring the cost of infrastructure to the existing taxpayers, but taking away our wetlands, forcing our water to be ditched in, go into the creeks, and all of this pollution is actually run in a much more efficient manner into the bay. And what we need to do, and Ruta touched on this, people, this is not sexy stuff. This is just down and dirty. The Community Planning Act of 1985 required every county to come up with a comprehensive plan as a roadmap to guide its future growth. So we fight really hard. People like Andy, a lot of the folks that you see around this room, they fight to get these protective measures put into the comprehensive plan. what happens is, and I'm just speaking to Sarasota, there are about a dozen people that have run this town, and they've run it since the 70s, and the names change from time to time. There's 3 law firms in town that are prevalent, more and more in Venice, the Icard Merrill law firm in Sarasota, and the Williams Parker law firm. Then you've got Rex Genshin from Lakewood Ranch, you've got Pat Neal, Carlos Baruch. Just with respect to those 2 gentlemen, these comprehensive plan changes that take the fiscal neutrality provisions out of the comprehensive plan, transfer their cost of infrastructure to us, gives them enough money where Carlos Baruch and Pat Neal each gave Governor Scott $1 million each time he ran for the governorship. Pat Neal was rewarded by now he picks all of our circuit court judges. Carlos Baruch was rewarded. He actually headed up the State Constitutional Revision Committee. So literally, the level of corruption is not only prevalent at the county commission level, but it has gone through to the judiciary. What we need to do is recognize that it is incumbent upon each and every one of us to pay attention to your candidates and get better people in office. If I can I have 1 minute to go through a couple of things? Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you guys very much. Hopefully we can touch on some of these other things.
Okay, so I want to give everybody a chance to speak, and I know you guys have some questions. I do want to point out a few things. Some of these guys back here have tables outside, so if you have more information that you want to stuff into your head, you can go out and talk to them personally, get some of their literature, all that kind of stuff. Also, you may have noticed, I saw one flow through here, there are signs for bull sugar out there. Bullsugar.org is a website you can go to, and it kind of shows who's been getting money from Big Sugar and those big corporations, so you can know who not to vote for, okay? So that's out there. You can go ahead and find those signs out there, take one home, put it in your yard, put it in your neighbor's yard, whatever. Also, I want to point out, if you haven't noticed yet, Dylan John Wade Cox is one of our wonderful artists out here. This man has used a lot of gas, ruined a lot of pairs of shoes, going out and taking pictures of what's been going on in the water. And we're going to be showing those on this wall all day long. In case you, like me, don't want to go to the water right now, you can still see what's going on and what these effects are. Okay? So give him a round of applause. Thank you. Okay, so we also have one more panelist we're going to add here, and then I'm going to start taking some questions from you guys. Okay, so I need you to conjure in your heads the real good question, and if you can, figure out who you want to ask that question to. Okay? So, but first I want to introduce you to Scott, who's a fisherman here in Sarasota. He's going to take about 2 minutes and explain what's the deal.
Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Wilson. I'm here because I am a lifetime Florida fisherman, both fresh and saltwater. I'm son of a 3-time Bassmaster Classic qualifier from the state of Florida, so during the 70s, I spent most of my time with my father traveling all the lakes through northern and central Florida, from Seminole to Okeechobee and everywhere in between. For 24 years, I lived in Marathon in the Florida Keys. I owned a commercial fishing boat there and commercial fish throughout that entire time. For the last 30 years, our family has owned and passed down a small fish camp house that's on the Kissimmee River at a place called Camp Mac. If anybody's ever been there, awesome place in Florida. What I'm here to talk about today and tonight is the spraying that takes place on all the Central Florida, North Florida freshwater lakes. What they're spraying, how they're spraying, and how often and how much. It's gotten out of control since the law Florida 369, which is the Florida Aquatic Weed Control Act. I'm here to talk about that this needs to be repealed. What everyone needs to understand is that the water quality that happens here originates in north central Florida. It starts in a lake called Apopka that's been dead now for more than 25 years. It floats down through Disney, it comes through the upper and then the lower Kissimmee Basin, and then every year through the wintertime there is a major drawdown of the Kissimmee Basin to feed Okeechobee, to feed the sugar industry. Also, what I'd like to talk about when I get the opportunity later on is to explain that this has happened before. I was eyewitness as a commercial fisherman in 1988. There were toxic discharges that came from Lake Okeechobee that they ran down through the canals and they emptied into Shark River, they emptied into Lossman's River, and primarily entered into Florida Bay at East Cape Sable. All right, at that time, and I had not heard this term until yesterday from the scientists locally. The scientists locally finally came out and said that dirty word, brown tide. And I want to tell you, I've experienced brown tide. Now, brown tide down in South Florida, when it happened in '88, very, very rapidly came what they call black tide, and all the fishermen named it Black Death because it killed everything in the water column. And I mean everything. And I don't want to be a pessimist, and I'm going to let this thing go, but I feel like that we're dealing with, on this coast of Florida right now, a lot more than they're telling us that's in the water.
Okay. Does anybody have a question they would not like to shout? Thank you.
You guys keep calling it.
You didn't understand the point.
You guys keep calling it blue-green algae. I don't understand why they're not actually calling it by what it is, and that's, cyanobacteria. It's a microcystin toxin, and this stuff plays on your immune system when you're not neurological system. And I mean, people think that they're going crazy, and they're not. It actually is affecting your brain. So I mean, people need to wake up and realize that these are toxins that we're dealing with, and it's really tragic. And I don't understand why they keep calling it blue-green algae.
Anybody want to tackle that? What's that, Andy?
I think the lady said it all. I think that was all we needed to hear. It was a statement. It was a great statement. Thank you very much.
All right. Who else has a question? Dude in the blue shirt back here. Could you pass this? Yeah.
Thank you. My wife Christine and I stayed in Mike's hotels a couple times, and we don't even have 12 months on that island over there. It's just people. I hear a lot of uniformed positions, but my question is, who is the point person, lady or man, who is running this show? Who do we turn to? Who do we send money to? And second lady, who is the bad person? Is it the CEO of a sugar company? Who do we go after? What? Both of them.
Sir, thank you for your question. That's a very, very direct and important question. First of all, you can help is you send money to an organization called the Calusa Water Keeper. That's John Cassani, okay? They're literally, taking activists like myself and others and community members and training them, and they're actually independently testing the water, okay? So we cut right through the DEP, we cut right through the bullshit, and we get done the whole lie, and we double down and we actually support the Calusa Water Keeper program by independent testing. To double down on your second question is, you want to know who to blame, right? Okay, every time you see a dead manatee, every time you see, red tide, every time you see cyanobacteria, every time you see a dead fish, every time you see impaired waters, every time you see what you're seeing on a daily basis happening to all of us, on a level of 200 plus square miles. Your target is simple. It's in the language of their name. It's called the South Florida Water Management District. Every time you see cyanobacteria, every time you see a dead manatee, every time you see your water is completely screwed, every time you're sick, that is spelling mismanagement. And that's where you want to direct your energy. Keep in mind, the only person who appoints the members of the board of the South Florida Water Management District is the governor, and they are basically a unregulated, uncontrolled, loose bandits who are in control of our water supply only for the benefit of special interests like Mosaic and Big Sugar.
Anybody want to add to that?
Okay, so basically, U.S. Sugar donates to the Democrats and Republicans evenly. So it's 8 million, 8 million. So whoever's in is bipartisan, number one. Number two, Mosaic donates to Moat Marine. And Moat Marine is the one that does all the examining of all the dead animals and stuff. And they also are the ones that have the aquarium, Moat Aquarium in Sarasota.
What can you
Everybody
do?
wants to answer this question. Good job. Hang on just a minute, you are the next question, but we're going to give you guys each a minute each to talk about the answer.
Okay, so again, who owns these companies is where you got to look, because you got to hit them at their pocketbook. You got to hit them at what they're selling and through all of these areas. They're not going to listen to us about cleaning up this issue because they make more money by selling the chemicals that are used in the process they say to clean it up. We've got to look at deep information, and so look at these websites that all of us out here are going to be putting out. That's where we're going to continue to develop this thought, develop this attack plan, because this is not going away, folks. A sponge can only hold so much. South Florida, the Everglades, Lake Okeechobee, all these water systems have been totally infiltrated for 30 to 50 years. And it's not going to stop just because now we say, okay, we're going to do some minor adjustments, divert the waters all different ways. That's what these pictures are showing us. These satellite imageries are showing us just how big this problem is. So, okay, we can look at the governor as the problem. We can look at who funds the governor. You know, you realize he was the Bush family lawyer since 1971 from Texas. He was brought to us under deceptive purposes. This whole thing goes back, all of this. They put DuPont out of business. Remember DPT? Remember we said how bad DPT was with doing to us back 60s, 70s, 80s and such? They stopped that because they didn't own that company. But then they do the Monsantos. Then they do all the other companies, the Mosaics, that they do own. That's how they fund themselves. It's deceptive practices. We've got to undermine them by exposing these blind trusts. Find out how they say they don't know who they make their money from, but actually, oh, their wife was in charge of the company. That's the type of stuff that these politicians have to be exposed.
Okay, Ruda? And if I just wanted to say real quick, just want to say, kind of ironic how they consider the activists for clean water eco-terrorists when the real eco-terrorists are the people this gentleman's talking about.
Well, speaking from a politician's side, it comes down to the legislator. Because the legislators are the ones who make the laws of protection. They're also the ones who make deals with Big Sugar or Mosaic. So it does start with the governorship. And it goes from the governorship down into the House. Because everybody you can't make laws without the legislator, and you can't get it pushed through and approved without the governor signing off. So ultimately you can blame companies, yes, but you can't go after the companies because they're in for profit and they're only answering and getting their way through legislators like the governor who's going to sign off on deals. That's the only way, because outside of that we can talk till we're blue in the face about the evils of these companies, but until these politicians are held accountable for the deals that they're making, that's where it comes from, because they're the ones who give them the red and green cards to either do things or not do things. So it's a legislation issue, and it has to be addressed by getting Governor Rick Scott out first.
So we now have some key places to focus on who we need to get out and who we really need to look at problem. I'm going to change the focus a little bit and discuss how we can come together to address this issue. Now, there are a lot of separate groups that are working on this across the state. One issue that I've realized is that we don't have a database that's public for everybody to find out how they can get involved, how they can help. We don't have information available on water testing that's being conducted across the state. We don't have public health tests that are being made available to everybody in the state. In order to find this information, you've got to dig for hours on Facebook groups. That's not very efficient. So what my group is doing is we are forming a database to house all this information, county by county. We're going to be organizing direct action involved with all the other groups around the state. I hope to partner in a coalition with everyone so that we can have all this information in one place, and you guys will be able to go on there and find out how you can get involved, figure out what legislation is making this a problem in your community, in your county. We're going to get together, we're going to work on changing that legislation.
What is that website again?
The Florida Water Protectors Collective.
Okay, we're gonna have these two last guys go on this question, and that question over there. You're being so patient, you're awesome.
Okay, the idea of who to go to, who's the point person? We sort of deftly avoided that. John Cassani's a great guy, he's a colleague of mine. You know, Suncoast Waterkeeper, Calusa Waterkeeper. But here you go, there's people in this room. There's David Shapiro, who's still, David, are you still in the room? Okay, David Shapiro is running for Congress. David is one of the good guys. David is a guy, if we could get into Congress, he's got phosphate mines in his district, he's got acid plants where they make the fertilizer in his district. He's going to make a difference. He got endorsed by the Sierra Club, as has Ruta, as has Margaret Good running for State House.
Martha who?
Margaret Good. Yeah, running for State House. Also Liv Coleman, also Tracy Pratt. All good people, all in these districts around here. And Wesley Beggs, who's primarying Mike behind me, and Mike himself. But you know, these are the places to go. These are the people who are going to send those SOBs home. And so we need to support them with volunteer time, with shoe leather, and with cold hard cash. Lots of it.
Thank you. This is going to be kind of short. I'm going to echo what everyone else was saying a little bit. A friend of mine gave me a poster many years ago, and it shows just a perfectly flat, hey, come on, folks.
Guys, leave an aisle open. Move as far forward as you can.
So what I was saying, a friend of mine gave me a poster many moons ago. It showed a perfectly flat water with a drop hitting on it. And the caption underneath said, no single raindrop ever feels responsible for the flood. And when you actually think that one all the way through, literally the solution, and this goes back to this gentleman's question, it's absolutely a legislative solution, but that solution is each and every one of you out here. You have to actually vet the candidates, and you have to vote for the right candidates. We're the government, not them, and it's incumbent upon us to do our research and put the right people in office. I want to defer the rest of my time to Mr. Wilson. He's a heck of a knowledge. You know what? You don't have to be a scientist to know about the water. You just have to spend your life on it. Mr. Wilson and generations of his family are indicative of that, and I'd just like to give my time to him.
Thank you. I'm going to throw a complete wrench in this fire as far as who to point a finger at. Many people, until I started investigating this, I wrote a post on Facebook that I really didn't expect